Okay, intentional torts. We're gonna go by this intro part really soon. Intentional torts is gonna take up a lot of what's to come, and then we're gonna jump into negligence. But to break it down real quick, two elements. One is the act, and two is the intent. And intent, if you notice here, I put an asterisk because we kind of have to define this a little more through court cases. Now, the act, kind of intuitively, it feels a little obvious, but if you break it down, it just becomes a voluntary muscle contraction. And I think the example we get in the Prosser book is that the act of like shooting a gun, right? The act is not necessarily the bullet coming out, right? The act is not necessarily um, like the gunpowder going off. It's the act is you moving your finger, and the trigger just happens to be there, in which a series of events follows. And I don't really know exactly what the purpose of understanding that is, but I kind of breaks it down in a really granular state where your act is like independent of intent, can feel very innocent. And I don't know, I think that helps my understanding, but that's what I have down. And if I were to break it down into kind of a logic thing too, is that, well, if it's not voluntary, then it's not an act. And so therefore, if it is an act, then it has to be voluntary. And so knowing that, I think is going to move pieces of the law around a bit, to which I don't really understand yet. So stay tuned. Okay. Intent. This is kind of the bulk of a lot of intentional torts. And one is going to be the knowledge to bring about consequences. And this is the most obvious one, right? If I intend that you fall after I put my foot down and trip you, right? That can be, it's kind of simple. I intended to do harm and see the result happen. Where we get into more gray areas is when I don't necessarily have the intent that you will fall and harm will happen, but I can have substantial certainty that my action will result in something that is not good to you. So this is going to be carved out in our next case, and then we're going to go into different kinds of intentional torts. But last thing to note here is that when we look at the substantial certainty part, we don't necessarily look at it from a subjective matter. We don't really care what's going on in your head. We care about what the reasonable person would kind of conclude from the situation outside of it. And so, it's kind of, I didn't quite realize how kind of sticky that is, but this reasonable person concept is, I think, the more I think about it, a little bit more of a source of controversy than I had once thought.